Свою роботу я люблю за свіже повітря, перший фактор. Дерево мовчить.
First of all, I love my job for the fresh air.
Запах дерева.
Secondly, wood doesn't talk. Thirdly, it's the smell of the wood. If you simply look at it, you will see that wood is very interesting to work with, and it doesn't accept any errors.
І дерево не любить похибок.
An ATO veteran by calling and a biker in Seoul, Rostyslav Chernenko found his vocation in the manufacture of wooden products. He calls his job the pill that cures from all diseases, and it also helps him to adapt to a peaceful life after serving in the war. Wood calms you down, and it doesn't ask unnecessary questions. Also, in the end, you can see and appreciate the results of your hard labor.
На фінальній стадії ти бачиш свою роботу.
Rostyslav decided to find out what war was in order to dot the I's and cross the T's himself. When the anti-terrorist operation started, he worked as a taxi driver in Lviv. His passengers shared their stories with him, including those about the events in Donbass. It was then that Rostyslav thought that there were as many opinions as there were people, and that you can only find out the truth if you see everything with your own eyes. That is why he quit his job, took his favorite motorcycle, and went on a courageous trip to Donbass, where the war was raging.
Я поїхав туди, щоб подивитися, як живуть хлопці, їхній побут.
I went there to see how our military lived, their way of life and their conditions, so that I could come back home and tell everyone about what I witnessed. I was going to Pisky, but I met a trucker on the way who advised me not to go there. He explained that I would be a good target and trophy. Rostyslav decided that he wasn't too keen on fighting the militants alone and changed his route. He set off to Marinka. At the checkpoint, he met soldiers of the Zaporizhia battalion, started asking them about everything and taking pictures so that he would have what to tell and show to his neighbors about the war. Everything was calm and quiet while they were talking, but then suddenly there was an explosion. They struck a tank about 115 meters from us, and they immediately dragged me into the trench. It was the first time when I saw a tank under mortar fire. The enemy positions were right behind the slag heaps. The so-called Novorossiya unit opened fire. Even though the ATO headquarters reported that Marinka was under the control of the Ukrainian army, the militants still kept firing at the settlement. Rostyslav was told that it was dangerous for him to stay there, so he continued his journey early in the morning. Rostyslav rode through Mariupol and Ilovaisk and got to Amvrosivka, where he was stopped by Ukrainian soldiers and told that there was no way further and that Shakhtarsk had already been under control of the self-proclaimed DPR. In order to find out more about the battles for Shakhtarsk, Rostyslav stayed at the checkpoint for 2 days. When he was about to continue on his way, the militants opened fire at the Ukrainian positions again. I went numb when I heard the first wave. I felt that adrenaline of fear. They threw me into a dugout together with my motorbike. I was sitting there like Alexander the Great on his horse. They dragged me out when the shelling subsided, and just as I was about to leave, it started again. I had no time to get my bike into the trench, so I dived in there myself. I started hearing explosions as soon as I ended up in the trench. One of them was a direct hit, and my motorcycle became a heap of spare metal parts.
Я байк кидаю, з ласточкою залітаю в бліндаж, тільки залетів, то почалося гуп, і пряме попадання там байк. Взагалі рознесло на запчасті.
At that point, Rostyslav, who was given the call sign biker, had lost his faithful steed. Therefore, he had to travel by foot, as he couldn't stay with the battalion any longer. He decided to return home through Telmanovo, today Boykivske, which is a small provincial town in Donetsk region. From there, he managed to get to Zaporizhia and then to Kyiv and Lviv. He walked, hitchhiked, and was given rides by the volunteers. He finally reached his destination by the evening. At the checkpoint, I was stopped. Good evening. Good evening. Where are you heading? To Telmanovo. No, my friend, you are not going to Telmanovo. You're heading to Russia. What do you mean to Russia? The Russian border is just 5 kilometers from here. Then so be it, said Rostyslav, and he asked them to let him stay. He said he would help with odds and ends, and that volunteers were always needed. At the time, the separatists had been smuggling weapons across the border in large quantities. So there was a need for a scout who would find those rebels. That task was entrusted to Rostyslav.
Каже, будеш сидіти там десь в барах.
They told me that I should sit in a local bar, gave me money and said I should order a cup of coffee, sit there and just listen. So I stayed there for about 5 days and found 4 separatists.
Я вичислив.
It was then that Rostyslav decided he had to fight together with the rest. When he got home, he signed up for military exercises.
Перший мій вишкіл.
My first training was in Ternopil region in the village of Lanivtsi. It was organized by Afghan veterans from Ternopil. After that, I signed up for more exercises in the Desna Training Center. Desna is a training center of the volunteer Ukrainian Corps. Rostislav says it was very difficult there and that very few members of the military group were able to withstand the load. 70% of them couldn't take it, and the other 30% were the backbone of volunteer battalions. After a month and a half of difficult training, Rostislav ended up in the 5th Battalion of the Volunteer Ukrainian Corps. I was in a gendarmerie unit, which was responsible for maintaining discipline, so no one would get drunk. We maintained our discipline. Having served there, Rostislav started contract service in the armed forces of Ukraine. He asked to be part of the 9th Infantry Battalion. I was in a gendarmerie unit, which was responsible for maintaining discipline, so no one would get drunk. We maintained our discipline. Having served there, Rostislav started contract service in the armed forces of Ukraine. He asked to be part of the 9th Infantry Battalion. When I was in Novoazovsk, I promised the Chief of Staff that I would return to their battalion. At that time, the 9th Battalion was based in the Popasna area, in the Grey Zone. The hottest spots were in the villages of Stavok and Sadok. It was silent there until we came. As soon as we started recon, the fighting began. I was running from position to position, and just as I jumped into a trench, a grenade blew up near me, and the shrapnel was in my body for 3 more days. He says he had so much adrenaline that he didn't even feel the pain. But in spite of his injuries, Rostislav continued service until the contract ended and then decided that he had had enough. He needed to regain composure. So he returned home and started adapting to a peaceful life, which turned out to be much harder than he had expected. It was a huge disappointment when I returned to the peaceful land. I saw that people did not care about what I had gone through. Most people are an inert mass these days. That is exactly what enraged me. He tried to get a job as a driver. He thought it wouldn't be a problem given the number of years of experience he had. He found an ad and signed up for an interview. He talked with the head of that company and everything went seemingly fine, so it was only a matter of paperwork. I don't have my passport with me, only my military ID. His attitude changed immediately and he asked if I had served in the war. I answered that I did serve, to which he replied that the company does not hire ATO veterans. That was in Lviv. I was deeply shocked. I told him to justify his words and he said, "You know, you'll return shell-shocked from the front. Who knows what's in your heads? What if you imagine something while driving, leave the car with the goods and run off to fight?" I said, well, if I was, like you said, out of my mind, shell-shocked, I'd just pick up this chair and smash it on your head. But since I'm a cultured and sane person, I'll just turn around and leave. After that, Rostislav was about to give up, but he still needed a job. So he started sending his CV to all organizations that had vacancies, hoping that his skills would be required at least somewhere. The answer came from Kiev, where a taxi service was recruiting people. So Rostislav packed up and went to the capital. My first question was if they employed ATO veterans. They looked at me surprisingly and said that such people were a priority. That statement lifted his spirit and gave him strength. He learned the city and got clients. However, the happiness of the taxi driver didn't last long. He realized that he started getting tired of people. I realized that I couldn't work with people because I had military paraphernalia in my car, and they kept asking if I was an ATO soldier. Then they asked, "What are you protecting?" Rostislav thought the question, "Who are you fighting for?" was strange, but he just laughed that off at first and watched how people reacted. I'm a biker. They blew up my bike and now I'm taking revenge. But then he got tired of joking. He realized that there was no point. Rostislav felt bad and he knew that he had to do something about that. That's when wood came into play. First, he started making souvenirs for himself and the military. Then, out of curiosity, he posted his works on social media. I take a photo of my stools and wrote a caption: "Stools, chairs and bookshelves." A cafe owner, who is also a volunteer, asked me if I could make some furniture for her since she was opening a new cafe. Rostyslav thought an order like that was pure luck. It was his first big order, 16 benches and 8 tables. He got down to business and made this furniture. We were introduced to each other.
Нас познакомили, сказали: Ростислав, типа этот человек будет делать мебель. Вот, и с виду я посмотрел, такой грозный мужик.
I was told he was going to make furniture. He looked a bit angry at first, but when I got to know him better, he turned out to be a very positive person. I like people who are passionate about something, when they give it all to their work. Rostyslav has decent tools, so he did everything quickly.
Ростислава хороший инструмент, в принципе, поэтому он довольно оперативно и без особых подсказок все сам делал.
Rostyslav does not have a workshop yet, so he keeps his tools in his car and works at the places of his customers, although he's planning to get a workshop in the future, which is going to call Biker's Carpentry. He really enjoys working with pallets. He says those are reliable, practical, and inexpensive and have a very nice scent of fresh wood. He considers himself a free man who does not depend on anyone and can plan his own life. That is not entirely true, however. One phone call can suspend all his plans. If I get the call, I'll leave everything and go to Shirokina. That is because the Tyra unit is currently based in Shirokina. Tyra's Angels, more specifically, that is how soldiers call them. It is a demilitarized medical volunteer unit, which evacuates wounded fighters from the front. Rostyslav is their driver, and if the Angels need help, there is nothing more important than that, because the country is at war, because his comrades are dying there. He knows the answer to the question: who are the soldiers fighting for? Do you?